Hi, welcome. On this video, this is part two of my series by way of clicker training. Again, talking about various aspects of the dog and human dynamic. Talk about why it is that so many dog owners experience a ongoing relationship problem even after investing in this idea approaching training as a learning-based exercise. And so again, I talk about the source of the problem dog training world. This is it. This is the problem at the very beginning with how trainers are engaging a relationship problem at the very beginning. So this is where again you can see dogs moving around the training environment looking like fantastic for what they want. Okay, just like a selfish child can look fantastic, performing certain like good responses, but doesn't mean based again on other relationship dynamics that are in play or not in play, it doesn't mean that the relationship is actually getting better at all beyond some good responses. So again, I talk about the word behavior that's brought into the equation. It's a cautionary tale because oftentimes it doesn't belong, okay? Based again on just eliciting some good responses. So let's play some more of this video here as we continue to go through and break this down.
Luckily, you've come to the right place. I'm going to tell you very, very easily how you can begin to change your dog's emotional response to those things.
So, and again, I stopped this quick because there's so many words here, okay, that terms or words that are used in the dog training world that you have to be very careful. They're general. They're like superficial. And this is one of the things here. You have Adam Spivey talk about change your dog's, emotional response. Okay, what does that mean? Okay, it's like talking about your dog like in human terms. Understand it's not about emotional response, right? Because this goes into this whole fear thing, this whole superficial type of narrative that's going on here where it lacks depth. Okay, there's stress on your dog. Always keep that in mind. So the emotions your dog's having isn't the same type of emotions that you're thinking of. Okay, it's about control. It's about relationship. The big theme here is about relationship. Okay, dogs are pack animals. Okay, the strength and weakness is defined in the relationship that way through how you connect. And so leadership is very important. But this whole thing about this is where we're going to get into this thing about it talks about changing emotional response. I talk about the context of agreeableness, comfort. We're going to talk about this, how things can appear a certain way and not be. Okay, this is why I talk about how it is that dogs can be looking, right, well behaved. They can look, very agreeable, balanced within the home environment while holding an incredible amount of control up to a point of aggression. And this people get blindsided because it's like they're trying to connect the dots, say, why isn't my dog seems really good most of the time, but something's not right. But think about the whole, again, keep using the example, the parent example, the selfish child. Selfish child can look well behaved most of the time too, as they're playing their video games, they're doing what they want to do, right? But ask the question, when's the truth revealed within certain moments? Well, talk about influence and control being core ingredients, but think about parental influence, in play at certain moments. A parent is putting a certain expectation or demand onto a child to say clean up their room. And for the selfish child, you're probably going to get some kickback, right? So, truth is revealed when there's certain relationship dynamics that are going to reveal it. Versus, this is the thing, even with a selfish child, hey, clean up your room and here's $100. Well, the selfish child would be highly motivated, very responsive to picking up their toys for $100. They don't have access to the $100, right? And so, but does that represent that those responses are the be all and end all? Absolutely not, right? So here again, you get the same. So when you hear these trainers talking about changing the emotional response, just always think like surface, okay? Context. This sets up problems for so many people because again, a dog can seem agreeable. That's why you see dogs with tails wagging before they bite somebody. Like control offers, fulfillment, comfort. All right, offers up an image of a balanced dog. But same thing, how do you discern what's true and what's not, right? Bringing dog on the leash, control over the dog, right? Speaking of not using motivating agents. So understand there's a surefire way, okay, to know. Understand that, and that's good news. Okay, so if you're investing in the system of training, understand that everything's very intentional. Like you won't get blindsided. Okay, if you're following the system of training with, setting everything in motion the right way. If you're advocating properly, like you're going to see stuff that these trainers they're not dialed into that, the reality of certain things at all.
That make your dog react. It's not a simple case of just correcting your dog and telling it no.
So here, when he says, well, it's not simply a case of correcting the dog, telling the dog no, I understand that certain things aren't going to line up. So when balanced dog trainers present this whole image of corrections or no, well, it's not aligned properly anyway through how they advocate, influence over a dog, because it's through this balanced dog trainer idea of things. It's disconnected, right? Think of it like you're going in between two parenting styles back and forth, permissive and authoritative. You're bouncing back and forth. You're not fully, aligned with the right parenting style fully, right? So here's the problem. So their basis of saying, well, the word no isn't correct. Well, it's going to cause a problem for the dog because it has to make sense to the dog. So when I talk about speaking the right language, okay, through the method, that's a major theme of this system. So it goes into this guys like the dog daddy. When I talk about the dog daddy's approach, he power plays it, but it creates problems. It's erratic, like how he's moving around, how he's stepping with, those things matter. Okay, everything has to funnel. We talk about the word no here, or when balanced dog trainers are talking about punishment or whatever, it's not going to line up anyway because it can't, right? Because if your foundation isn't right, if you're advocating this type of, treat-based, okay, permissive, bribery-based idea that brings those themes in that are problematic, well, it causes a problem for the dog because this ain't making sense. What is it? Because here's the thing, when you deal with dogs that have gained more, like a higher level of control in the relationship, like aggressive dogs, that issue of clarity is even more critical. This is why I put out a couple of videos where you see someone petting on the top, like Zach George petting on the top of a dog's head, that dog gets aggressive. But if you look at the moment before that, the dog is like bumping Zach George's hand, like wanting that petting because this dog has a muzzle on, and nothing's lining up. So the dog is pining for more control, right? Because of the fact that everything is not aligned properly through how the owner is advocating control properly, right? The muzzle's there, that's some control. So it's like this type of a discombobulated back and forth that sets up problems. So it has to. So when you understand when you balance dog trainers talk about, no, or how they will affirm to say, well, this doesn't really work, so I'm going to advocate this way. Well, it doesn't work because you're not all in properly to begin with. So sometimes when you see these trainers that are like become balanced dog trainers, or they're using certain concepts, or they're back and forth, they're all over the place, it's because they're not properly in the right way to begin with. Okay, so that causes this type of this type of all over the place type of mentality, and you end up typically it's going to lean on the side of the door's wide open, the dog's continue to hold control because if influence isn't aligned properly through a intentional interaction based method, that's the only way it can happen properly, okay, the right way, then you're going to end up on the other side anyway. You're going to end up on the side of a dog, of the relationship not being resolved, because it's going to go in that direction, period, because that's where the dog's already at. The dog already is in control, wants more control, and so if you keep that door open that way and that side, everything's working against you. You can understand that to have a proper outcome, because that's just how the cards are stacked. The cards are stacked against you. You have to close that door, period.
You have to really change how your dog feels. In my experience, 13 years of working with dogs, I found something as simple as a clicker can start to.
So when you hear these trainers talk about 13 years, listen, I've had over 30 years, but you can have 30 years working the wrong way with dogs. It's like, don't pay attention to when trainers talk about amounts. The dog training world's been in a train wreck for 50 years. Okay, so this has been on a slow boil. So, the time a trainer has in the industry, it doesn't matter if they're following the wrong path, period.
Completely change how your dog sees certain triggers. This video will help you if your dog reacts to dogs, people, cats, squirrels, chickens. It doesn't matter. This will help you change your dog's emotion.
So this is the same thing. So context of agreeableness, and this other thing too, I mentioned about popularity. He's very popular over the UK, but these trainers, what they have is based on the current state of the dog training world, based on what's being marketed, they have the home field advantage. Okay, popular, but for the wrong reasons. Okay, I'll put that right out there because the dog training world is completely upside down, and so you have but look at all the dogs being blamed in the dog training community. The dog training world is not in good shape. Okay, so this has become a culture of this ideology has creeped into everything, and it's so easy to do, right? So easy to do.
Response. Step one to having a reactive dog and beginning to help him is get yourself one of these. This is a clicker. Now, if you don't want to use a clicker, you can use a marker word.
Now, you got a clicker, get rid of it. Okay, my thing is do not I'll say that right to the front. If you have a clicker, smash it, get rid of it. Okay, don't buy into this learning ideology.
Just make sure the dog understands that word means great things. For the purpose of this video, though, we're going to be using a clicker.
If you live in a floor,
you first need to charge this clicker. Now, I don't mean plugging it into a wall. It's not electronic. There's no cables. Charging the clicker is simply building that association to this sound.
So, same thing I mentioned. You watch the Victoria Stilwell video put up about clicker training. It's creating association. Okay, so tying in, a expectation, okay, of a reward, typically treats, right, to generate a response. Okay, it'd be no different than the selfish child example. It's like taking, a brand new Xbox game the selfish child wants, and putting it up out of reach where they can't see it, but they already know that it's part of them cleaning up their bedroom. Okay, so and then you work off queue up on some other signal that once they've done picking up their toys, it could be clapping your hands that they get that brand new Xbox game. Okay, that's the basic premise. Okay, so the thing is, and I tell people, don't get caught up in the semantics of this stuff sounding fancy. It's not. All you're doing here is the focus is on response. Okay, and there's the issue, the real problem here is the fact that you're generating these responses when the dog is already control's already manifested. You're already experiencing a relationship problem. There's the real issue here. Okay, so there has to be critical thinking to say, well, is that the right way to approach a relationship problem? Absolutely not. You should not be motivating responses this way from the get-go. Okay, that's not the way to do it. Okay, you have to engage in creating a type of a power play situation where the dog understands intent. It's got to be interaction based. Okay, you can watch my videos with how I'm doing it, but it's a different type of conversation that needs to happen. And it'd be like the best way to think of it. It'd be like a conversation where you're sitting down with a selfish child as a parent and laying out expectations. Like, this is what's going to happen, everything's coming to that kind of epiphany moment, but you're sitting down very close, like a type of interpersonal conversation that's parental influence focused versus, here's a brand new Xbox game. This is the brand new Xbox game scenario right here. The type of conversation I'm talking about is the interaction-based approach. Okay, where influence and control are coming online. Okay, that's your jumping in point. the right conversation. This is the wrong conversation. This sets people up to assume that, hey, I don't have to change. I don't have to define my role properly. I can trust these responses at face value. Very much that's a major problem.
How do you do that? Nice and simple. With your dog's breakfast or your dog's dinner tonight, instead of putting it on the floor and letting your dog wolf it down, I want you to take that bowl, I want you to click and give your dog a bit of dinner. Click, bit of dinner.
See, just crazy. So, and I tell people all the time, it's like when you tie in, because here's the depth of the problem in terms of response, in terms of being response focused this way, is without even using treats. I mean, you can set up a certain expectation with the dog that they gain control through something else. And they'll be motivated to do certain things that look good. Okay, so the relationships, by default nature, the relationship itself, once a dog's gained control, becomes its own motivator through the relationship. Like that's the depth of the problem here. So you want to make sure you remove the problem. Okay, you do not want to think about training this way. Okay, you want to think different. Okay, totally different.
No. Click, bit of dinner. I want you to do that until the food is all gone.
Okay, so here's the thing. Like, if you don't have a relationship problem with your dog, I want to mention this. Okay, like once you go through a process, understand like when you're engaging in a relationship problem, it's a temporary. It can become more structured. It needs to be. It has to correspond to where you're at in the relationship, how much control that dog's holding. So when I'm going into a situation, I'm assessing that. Okay, I'm defining through how the crate is used, structure, control, right? Intercepting a dog's state of mind. Okay, I talk about the focal point of influence as intercepting an expressed state versus changing focus. So very specific as to the role of influence, how it needs to be defined, okay, by way of a dog's state of mind. Okay, but as things progress and move forward the right way, right, things start to diminish, right? You can start to kind of relax more, right? So understand there's a more of a focused process when you're in the middle of a relationship problem, and things as they start to improve. Then if you want to use treats, okay, if you want to use, that's where all the fun is. In fact, if you watch my service dog training videos, it's a great example of that because it's 4 months. So at the front end, you'll see, because a lot of the dogs that I deal with are dogs that the owners have already owned for sometimes almost 2 years. They want to turn them into a service dog. And many of these dogs there is a relationship problem underway already because the owner is connecting at more of an emotional level because they need the support with the dog. So typically the dogs I encounter are dogs that other service dog trainers would never work with, right? Because their process isn't the way I describe. And so I'm taking these dogs, I'm reversing course, but the service dog training videos is a great example because at the initial stages of training, typically especially for the first, say, 5-6 weeks, it's a lot of the interaction-based method that I talk about. But then as things start to improve, as the process of these dogs change the right way, you'll see me start to focus on the response side of things with using, the motivators. Typically it's just verbal reward, and it's praise, it's touch, right? And so you can see how things move from, one side of the process to the other. Because a lot of times people watch my videos and they can kind of struggle in seeing them because they don't understand. Well, I'm in the middle of a relationship problem with a lot of dogs that aren't service dogs, and these dogs, so you don't see the other side of things typically because as things move forward, the dog's back home with the owner, and so things are continuing to progress. But with the service dog, you get to see kind of all of it. It's very helpful to see, okay, how do things transition and progress through the whole process.
By the time the dog has finished its dinner, it should understand this sound. How do you know if your dog understands this sound? Simply wait until your dog's not paying attention to you. Click that. Your dog should turn in the direction where it hears that and come running.
So same thing, it'd be no different. I use the parent example. It'd be like the permissive parenting dynamic. Think of it like the selfish child going to the parent that's enabling the child. They get what they want and not going to the other parent. So when these trainers talk about even focus, it's still context. How's the focus defined through the relationship? Are you being perceived the right way? Or are you a basically enabler, right? Emotion, control, being enabled through the relationship through you. So you have to understand that context matters, but here there's no context, right? Because there's no depth, right? It's just like let's just go with this. It's going to feel really good. It's going to look really good, initial appearance. But the same, saying goes, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. But looks as well, appearances are deceiving, especially when it comes to in the dog training world, because you're just taking those at face value. But look at all the inherent problems. You line this up, you go and do your own research as to how the struggles people are having by way of this ideology. You're going to see it. The collateral damage of this. So anyway, I'm going to finish part 2 here. I'm going to do a part 3 and a part 4 here. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned for part 3.